Being a housewife is going to make you weaken because you're just rumbling around at home every day. Go home by walking, the parasites I'm feeding. You'll get home in 3 hours from the airport. My husband, Darren, who picked me up and my parents-in-law at the airport, grinned and whispered in my ear. My parents-in-law are already in the car, so they can't hear my husband's voice. There were several men in suits and one woman in a deep hat around me, but I don't think they could hear me. After confirming it, my husband returned to the car and banged on the car window and then told his parents. Lucy is going to walk home from CU. It looks like she has something to do. It's also a good exercise, so don't worry about it. Go home first. My parents-in-law look at me a little worriedly. When I replied with a smile, they seemed convinced. My husband came up to me again, smiled contentedly, and threw up so that others could not hear. Then we'll go home first. Good luck. Come home with a course of 3 hours. I was about to head to the car, but right after that, I told my husband on his back, "Haha, it's going to take 3 hours to get home. 5 minutes is enough." Huh, is 5 minutes enough? I don't think so. How many kilometers do you think it is from the airport to your home? Again, my husband whispered in my ear so that others could not hear me. So I whispered in my husband's ear as if in return. You think I can't count it because I'm a housewife? I'm not a housewife anyway. Before that, I'm not your wife anymore, am I? Perhaps he didn't understand my words, but his face was filled with bewilderment. I will make my husband regret it for the rest of his life. I took a deep breath and decided to fight back against my husband. My parents-in-law seemed to feel something was wrong and got out of the car. What's the matter, Darren, Lucia? Yeah, Lucia said something weirded. She said, I'm not a housewife. I'm not your wife anymore. What? What do you mean, Lucia? Can you explain it to us so that we can understand it? Mother-in-law, you mean it as it is. I'm not Darren's wife anymore, and I filed divorce papers the other day. At that moment, a voice leaked from my husband and parents-in-law at the same time. It's understandable that you were surprised because it was sudden, but I'm not lying. I kept talking to prove it. The divorce papers I filed were not prepared by me. I just submitted what my husband gave me. Hey, Darren, are you sure? If it's true, why don't you know? No, there's no way I prepared divorce papers. I think it's a lie that annoys me that you filed divorce papers. Isn't that, Lucia? My husband sighed, shaking his head in dismay. My parents-in-law are also skeptical and can't seem to believe it. I'm not lying. Darren gave it to me, the divorce paper that was flickering to scare me. At that moment, his expression clearly changed. He wrinkles his eyebrows and exerts silent pressure. My parents-in-law were confused, but they still couldn't believe it, and they looked at each other. You can't do that by flickering divorce papers just to snort. Lucia is crazy today. Mom and Dad believe in me, don't they? In order to round up his parents, he tries to play with a good husband as usual. Of course, it doesn't work for me, but it works great for my parents-in-law. In order to silence my husband, they need to know his true nature. So I went to my husband's car, took something, and showed it to my parents-in-law. Lucia, what the hell is this? Father-in-law, this is a small eavesdropper, and this is the voice data. The audio data that was recorded played with explanation. From there, we heard a happy conversation between my husband and a woman. I've made a reservation at a famous fine dining restaurant today, and then we're going to relax at the hotel. Well, that's wonderful. I'm really glad I met you. It's a long-distance relationship, but I'm glad you take care of me. Is this what fate is all about? Let's have fun tonight. I stopped the audio here, but my husband and parents-in-law also stopped moving as if time had stopped. Cold sweat is oozing out of my husband's forehead. It seems to be a perfect effect as a preemptive punch. Was Darren cheating on you? You have been eavesdropping for quite some time ago, have you? You're right. I was preparing to get the evidence. I filed divorce papers not only because of my wife's snoring, but also because of infidelity. My husband has been lying to me and the two of you for a long time. My parents-in-law, who seem to be unbelievable about snoring me. After listening to the voice data, they couldn't help but suspect my husband. The suspicious husband seems to be thinking about something. He was silent, but soon began to deny cheating. This is it. It's a work-related person. We were just talking about it for a meeting on a business trip. The meeting, you needed to make a reservation at a fancy restaurant, and you said you were going to spend some time at the hotel. The woman also said, long-distance relationship? No, I do, but I remember. We're both into romantic dramas. I was recreating one scene from that time. It's just not like a relationship. Isn't it more problematic to set up a bugging device in your husband's car without permission? It's a crime. A crime. My husband who tries to forcibly shift the blame so that the excuse has become painful. It's only a matter of time before the monster's skin is peeled off. So I showed my parents-in-law, who don't know anything about the image I had saved on my phone, to make the next move to my husband. This is the woman I mentioned earlier, and she is a very beautiful woman. She seems to be in her early 20s, so it's no surprise that Darren is obsessed with it. Oh, hey, Lucia, were you not only eavesdropping, but also voyeurism? What a woman. Is it something a joke? You just said it was a crime, but I hired a detective, so it's legal. Darren, I know everything. My husband glared at me while gritting his teeth at the fact I revealed. If they are shown the evidence so far, they have no choice but to admit it and change to disappointment at once. However, my husband still refused to admit to the affair. No, it's not me. I'm sure Lucia fabricated it. I've said it many times, but there's no way I'm going to do that. I'm working hard to protect my family, and the company is appreciating me. I'm filial to your father and mother, right? Lucia, come on. It is more difficult to believe his excuses in this situation. He seems to know this, but he is desperate to do something about it. But he wouldn't have expected it to move this far, and he wasn't prepared at all. Makeshift excuses will only make things worse. It would have been much better to honestly admit and apologize. My husband looked down on me, saying, "Can't a full-time housewife calculate?" Which one can't calculate is obvious from the comical appearance of my husband now. Come on, you're the one who makes the mess, Darren. You don't know anything. For example, you don't know where I went on a trip with my parents-in-law this time, do you? What? I heard that it was a hot spring trip, but I don't know where I'm traveling, so why are you so bossy? We were going to Aita Prefecture. You're familiar with it, aren't you? Oh, that's a lie. Are you going to go that far? When my husband learned about the travel destination, he became impatient and pale to the extent that he could say that he had never been so impatient. I went to Aita Prefecture to give my parents-in-law a hot spring trip, and to come into contact with my husband's cheating partner in Aita Prefecture. Originally, I told my parents-in-law that we were acting separately in the area so that they could spend time without interrupt. When I arrived in Aita Prefecture, I went straight to his cheating partner. The name of the cheating partner is Shayla, and I told her that I was my real wife, Nadine. That's when I learned something ridiculous. Darren, you lied to Shayla that your wife is dead and you're single now. I can't even believe that you're lying, but did you have to make me die? I can't believe it. I sighed heavily, and at the same time, my parents-in-law raised an angry voice. What are you thinking, stupid son? Lucia, you're right. He's the one who's going to be sloppy. It's pathetic. It's pathetic. Lucia even gave us a hot spring trip. Compared to that, you're cheating on your wife. Moreover, you are lying and making excuses. Oh, it's really pathetic. The expression of my parents-in-law was so full of bitterness that anyone could see that they were disappointed. My husband, who can no longer look ahead, is staring at the ground all the time. My husband has no choice but to admit everything, apologize, and receive the reward he deserves. Still, my husband refused to admit it. I don't know, Shayla. It's all Lucia's delusion. I'll never admit it. Let's go home. Like I said, you should walk home. You deserved because you bothered me. My husband, who shouted loudly, tries to get into the car, but my parents-in-law do not move at all. The true nature of my husband, who was fully exposed, would have been a real shock to my parents-in-law. My husband did something irreparable, but if he had admitted everything and apologized, the future might have been completely different. However, he made a mistake. So I didn't hesitate to give him the final blow. Is it okay to shout so loudly? People at the airport can hear you. For example, like your favorite Shayla. Huh, what are you talking about? Why does it sound, Shayla? Right after that, my husband froze in front of the car. At the end of his gaze, he sees a woman wearing a hat deeply. When my husband came to pick me up and my parents-in-law, we were surrounded by several men in suits and one woman with a hat. A few of the men had already gone somewhere. Only the woman with the hat was watching us from a little distance. Why was the woman with the hat asking what was going on? Because she was Shayla, my husband's cheating. When I met Shayla, I told her about my husband's true nature, but she didn't seem to believe it. So I suggested that I actually let him see his true nature. Shayla was confused by this proposal, but she didn't know why I came to see her. She seemed to pick it up and came to the airport. Darren, it was all a lie. The fact that your wife has died and that you love me. Large tears flowed from her eyes, wetting her beautiful face. For my husband, he may have been nothing more than a convenient woman on a business trip. But for her, he was a man who was in a serious relationship. Although it was a verbal promise, it seems that they were also talking about marriage. When I saw her, I was reminded that my husband's lies were terribly cruel. You have such a wonderful wife, but you lied to me that she's dead. It really sucks. Trampling on my feelings, it toppled Darren. My husband was stunned by her appearance. He moved my mouth to say something, but the words don't come out. It seemed to be the most effective way to fight back against my husband, and he fell completely silent. Then my mother-in-law came in and silently slapped my husband's cheek. There are tears in the eyes of my mother-in-law. My father-in-law's face was so horrible that I couldn't look at it directly. No matter how bad my husband is, he is an important son to my parents-in-law. He doesn't apologize for lying and hurting people. As he is their own son, the shock must be immeasurable. When I was worried about my parents-in-law, people gradually gathered around me. So I suggested that we move to a different location. I walked to my new house, which was a 5-minute walk away. Seriously, you moved to a new house? When we arrived at the room, my husband, who had been silent for a long time, muttered, As I said at the beginning, I have already moved into a new house. My husband, who confirmed it, continued to mutter, You really put out the divorce papers all... Even if we enters the new house, it seems that everyone's anger does not subside, and they standing around my husband. Finally, my husband began to talk about the reason for the affair while sitting upright as if he had... I was under a lot of pressure. I worked hard for Lucia, and because of that, my work was highly evaluated. I've been entrusted with more responsible work. I just wanted a way out of a situation where I couldn't afford to make a single mistake. That's when I thought, Lucia, a housewife can eat just by staying at home. I thought this was unfair, and that's why I snored at my wife. It's the same reason for cheating. After saying that, my husband rubbed his forehead vigorously on the floor and sat down with all his might. I'm really, really sorry. I will never do this again. My husband, who had been lying and making excuses, finally said the words of apology. I don't think I can forgive my husband for what he did. Even so, the expressions of my parents-in-law and Shayla, who were tense, relaxed a little when my husband apologized in earnest. You just have to admit it and apologize from the beginning. You're going to pay for your wife and Shayla. I know. I'm really sorry, my mom and dad. My husband, who continued to sit on the ground, apologized to us again and declared that he would take responsibility. My parents-in-law and Shayla seemed to have lost their strength at once and sit down on the spot. However, I was the only one standing, and I told my husband, Darren, you're pretty good at it. You should become an actor, huh? What? Actor? Lucia, what are you saying? Before he could finish his sentence, I took the papers out of my bag and tossed them to him. At that moment, my husband looked into my eyes with his whole body shaking. His eyes seem to be frightened, and his eyes are shaking slightly. Give me a break. How do you know so much? It's just that the detective was good, and that's how I got to know about these. I know you've had other local wives as well as Shayla. My parents-in-law and Shayla, who were sitting, looked at my husband at the same time. My husband couldn't see either of their faces and looked down. As I said earlier, my husband has not only Shayla but also other local wives. My husband, who had an increased business trip, called out to women everywhere and had an affair with 3 women. It would be a lie to say that he was feeling pressure at work. If you can't afford it, you can't have an affair with multiple people. No, even if you can afford it, you can't have an affair. But I was reminded that common sense doesn't apply to him. Everyone, he is trying to deceive everything with lies and lies after lies. I will never forgive you, and I will ask for as much alimony as possible. I'm also going to report everything to your company. Darren, me and your mom are going to cut ties with you. How stupid are you? Maybe we were raised wrong. I'm really sorry, Lucia and Shayla. This time my parents-in-law bowed deeply. Of course there should be no grudge against my parents-in-law. I just can't forgive him for making such kind parents cry. When I glared at him, he remained to look down. He looked up slowly and said something ridiculous. Lucia, you can't live without me. Don't be bossy. Dad, Mom, Shayla, it's just an affair, and your reactions were too overblown. I'll pay you as much as you want, so don't show your face in front of me again. My husband's rough breathing echoed in the new house, leaving everyone speechless. It would be useless to say anything to him anymore, but I want to say this, so I opened my mouth. You can't live alone, can you? You've had the support of a lot of people, and you're where you are now, but you don't know that. If you don't know, you'll definitely regret it one day. You idiot. I will never regret. Don't beg me anything. Saying that, he jumped out of the new house. After that, he voluntarily resigned from the company, but it seems that he went to submit his resignation letter on the day he jumped out of the new house. He must have taken action himself before I reported this to his company. However, he would realize that it was the wrong choice. I had already kept in touch with 3 local wives. I exposed all his true nature, and the wives who were deceived were also on my side. Everyone gets on board at his new job and becomes a big uproar. Rumors spread within the industry, making it difficult for him to find a new job. Currently, he seems to be managing to make ends meet with a part-time job. I knew about my husband's current situation because he contacted me and my parents-in-law. Even though he was breathing that I couldn't regret it, he cried and begged us many times. Of course, we pushed him away mercilessly. It is obvious that helping him will not change anything. If the husband himself does not realize his mistake and correct it, he will repeat the same thing. On the other hand, I have returned to the workplace where I worked before marriage, and enjoying my single life. There are some good encounters at work, but to be honest, I want to see how things are going. I want to enjoy my single life for a while and enjoy a new life.